So I asked myself, well, first of all, I love making lists, I love making flowcharts, I love taking large amounts of information and kind of boiling them down to some key points, and I also like taking key points and building them up into huge complicated messes. And so I don't know which this is, but this is my attempt at basically describing the basics of what biology is all about, but in a slightly different way from the way other people do. So in a sense, at the center is this hereditary material, although you can see it's not exactly at the center. But what you have is usually the DNA. In some viruses, it's RNA. But DNA makes RNA, which is involved in regulation, but also is involved in the production of proteins, and most familiarly, it's involved in the production of proteins. And proteins are hugely important for the manifestation of phenotype. What you look like, how you act, all these things are phenotype. And phenotype has two main functions. Really just one main function, because they flow from one to the other. One of them is making sure that you survive. And the other, and this is the key one, is making sure that you reproduce. You can't reproduce unless you survive. And biology is all about reproduction. Anything that has failed to reproduce is not represented today. It goes away. And we have a bias, because we're living things, we have a bias towards being alive. And therefore, we consider the individuals that have survived to be the winners. And these are the individuals we tend to focus upon. And it requires reproduction because individual organisms are not immortal. The only way their genes can survive is if they reproduce. So you've got this long chain where you've got this information that needs to be processed into these little machines that together produce what you look like and how you act. That's all about having really the DNA survive so that the DNA can be passed on to the next generation. Now, you have differential passing on of information to the next generation, and the study of that is evolution. And evolution impacts genotype. So what's genotype? You see I've got these two arrows here. Genotype really is just a description of the information that's contained in the hereditary material. So you've got DNA, and DNA contains information, and really the genotype is the information, but these things kind of go hand in hand. So who reproduces impacts what genotypes are around, what information is around, and ultimately, therefore, what organisms look like and how they act. And this process of understanding how differential reproductive success can impact what genotypes are around is called evolution. These things are studied at the levels of populations and organisms. Evolution is a population level thing. Survival often is, and certainly phenotype is typically seen as an organismal level thing. Somewhere within this survival and reproduction, all of these things here, is also ecology. So very complicated stuff.